She sold herself to save her father from crushing debt, but became a bargaining chip in a cruel man's game. Simon Gray thought he could own anyone, treating lives like property and calling it business. But Caleb Ward, a silent gunslinger with a buried past, bought her freedom and brought justice with him. But just wait until you see the stunning twist that turned the tables, and how justice, in the end, claimed its victory. The sun bled orange over the rolling hills of West Texas, its dying light cutting across the land like a slow knife. Nothing here softened with dusk, not the wind, not the earth, not even hope. Dust coiled around the crumbling Hart Ranch like a noose. Paint peeled from the siding, the fences leaned like drunks in the wind, and the barn door creaked as if in mourning. Once, this land had held cattle, wheat, and men with pride in their spines. Now, it held nothing but a broken man and his daughter. Isabella Hart stood by the kitchen hearth, sleeves rolled up, hands raw from scrubbing the same cast-iron pot for the third time, not for the pot's sake, but to outrun the silence. Her father, Samuel Hart, once rode tall and drank slow, but luck hadn't just turned on him, it had buried him. Cards, whiskey, and one final crooked hand had cost him the ranch, the stock, the saddle under him. And yet, it wasn't enough. The debt remained, and those who came to collect weren't the sort to knock politely. The front door slammed open like a rifle crack. Isabella flinched, but didn't move from her post. She heard boots, 3 pairs, heavy, impatient, and the brittle voice of her father begging through cracked lips. "Please," Sam said, "I just need 1 more week." A low chuckle followed. Not cruel, just final. Then another voice, slower, cooler than ice in whiskey. 1 week, Sam? It was Simon Gray, the name alone turned stomachs from Amarillo to San Angelo. Land baron, loan shark, empire builder, and every man in Texas knew. Once Gray had your name on paper, he owned your future. "I gave you 3 months," Gray said, voice steady as a hanging rope. "Now I'm taking something back." Isabella's hands stopped scrubbing. Her knuckles whitened. She stepped out from the shadows and stood in the doorway of the kitchen, eyes amber, sharp as splinters in sunlight. Gray looked at her like a man assessing livestock. He gestured lazily with a gloved hand. "She's young, strong, got backbone, I'll give her that." Her father looked like he'd been shot. "No," he croaked. "You can't." "I can," Gray cut him off. "And I will. She works off your debt. 1 year. That clears your books." The air in the room changed, thickened, soured. Isabella didn't blink. 1 year, she said, her voice even, "and you leave him be after that. No more collectors, no more threats." Gray smiled like a man who never lost. "You have my word." She nodded once, then turned and packed her things in silence. They rode her to a place called Elm Creek. No questions, no explanation. Just a wagon, a rope-tied trunk, and a night sky that didn't blink. But when they reached the edge of the valley, she was led not to a ranch filled with Gray's men, but to a small, weather-worn cabin standing alone on the ridge. Lantern light flickered behind the windows. A man stood outside, tall, broad-shouldered, with the kind of stillness that made others nervous. He wore black from hat to boots. His face was weathered, his eyes unreadable. The driver tipped his hat, handed over the contract, and left without a word. The man unfolded the paper, read it once, then looked at her. "My name's Caleb Ward," he said. "I bought your contract." Something cracked inside Isabella then. Not loudly, not with sound, but like the silent snap of something once steady. She had been sold, not to Gray, but to a stranger, a man who didn't even ask her name. 2 weeks of silence. 2 weeks passed, and Caleb Ward barely said a word. He gave Isabella her own room, brought home fresh fabric from town, and made sure there was always food on the table. But beyond that, nothing. No questions, no demands. She worked without being told, cleaning, hauling water, cooking meals before dawn. The silence between them wasn't hostile. It was colder than that, like standing beside a man carved from stone. But on the 3rd week, something cracked. She burned her hand while shifting a kettle over the fire. The pain made her drop the ladle with a sharp cry. Caleb was beside her in seconds, kneeling, steady, quiet. He took her wrist and lowered it gently into a bowl of cool water. His touch was careful, almost hesitant. Then he finally spoke. "You're not here to suffer," he said, voice rough but steady. "That's not what I paid for." She stared at him, confused, but he was already walking away, the fire behind the barn. That night, she found him sitting by a small fire behind the barn. A revolver rested in his lap. In his hand, a letter, its corners worn and soft. "Her name was June," he said, "my wife." He didn't look at her when he spoke. "Gray took her when I refused to work his land. I wasn't fast enough to stop him." Silence fell like dust around them. "When I heard he'd claimed another debt, a girl this time, I bought the contract before he could, paid it in full." Then softly, "You're free, Belle. You've been free since the day you arrived. What you do with that, that's your choice." She didn't cry from sadness, not from fear, but from the weight of hearing kindness after so much cruelty, from the fury of what was stolen, from both of them. And for the first time, they sat side by side, not as captor and captive, but as two souls scarred by the same man. 1 month later, the silence of the hills broke. A trail of dust curled along the road to the ranch, kicked up by 4 riders. In front, Simon Gray, dressed sharp as ever, boots polished, eyes cold. Behind him, 3 men with rifles across their saddles, hired muscle with hard faces. Caleb stood on the porch, shotgun resting against his shoulder, his stance unshaken. Gray didn't bother with courtesy. "She's mine, Ward," he said flatly. "She didn't pay at all. I'm here to collect her and you if I have to." Before Caleb could answer, the cabin door creaked open. Isabella stepped outside. She walked slowly, but stood tall. The wind tugged at her dress, but her voice was steady. "I'm not a debt, and I'm not a thing. I paid more than enough. If you've come for blood, you'll have to take mine." She moved between them, placing herself between Gray's gun and Caleb's silence. Simon's lip curled. He drew his pistol, slow, calculated, but he never got the chance to aim. The first shot cracked through the air like lightning, then a second, a third. Dust exploded around their boots. Horses bucked. Shouts filled the air. And when it cleared, Gray was on the ground, clutching his side, coughing against the weight of his own defeat. Caleb stood motionless, shotgun lowered, smoke curling from the barrel. The other men had fled. Only Simon remained, gasping and cursing the dirt beneath him. But Caleb didn't finish it. He knelt, checked his pulse, then hauled him up with quiet force. "He'll answer to the law," Caleb said. "He deserves judgment, not revenge. Justice, not chains." The trial in town was swift. Word spread fast about the charges: coercion, racketeering, and worse. Witnesses came forward, names spilled. The judge gave him life behind stone walls. No more horses, no more power, just time. As for Isabella, she stayed, not because she had nowhere else to go, but because she chose to. The ranch that once felt like a cage became something else in her hands, a place she rebuilt, plank by plank, into a home. She took to riding the ridge at dawn, checking the water lines herself. She learned to mend fences, lead the cattle, handle accounts. And when the townsfolk started calling her Mrs. Ward, she didn't correct them. But she didn't confirm it either. She was no longer someone's daughter, no longer someone's burden. She was her own. And one day, sitting outside the general store, someone asked her, a stranger passing through with too many questions, "Is it true you were bought once?" She smiled, not bitter, not ashamed, just certain. "No," she said, "I was freed." And that was the end of it.